All right, it's 11. So good morning or late morning, everyone. It's great to have you here. I am Aviad Bodner. I'm the rabbi here at Ramath Orah. I've also had the honor of studying some part-time at Chovevei some years ago, and I'm grateful for them. This will be my third year in the 21 years of the Yemei Iyun B'Tanakh. And it's a great opportunity to come together and learn. Also, it is really nice that Rav Nadi and I are able to put aside our differences. And though Rav Nadi is the department chair at SAR, and I'm the Mashgiach Ruchani at Ramaz, we can still come together as big, learn Tanakh, and we can still be in the same building. So it's really wonderful for this opportunity. I'd like to begin, we're just a week before Rosh Hashanah, so we give me the frame a little bit of what we'll be doing. It's a famous Gemara in Barachot, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Leolam yishtadel adam larutz likrat malchei Yisrael. One should always go and run before or to see and to greet kings of Israel. Velo likrat malchei Yisrael bilvad. Not only kings of Israel, ela afilu likrat malchei akum. Even to non-Jewish nation kings, one should always go and to go greet them and to see them. This is actually very important to us here at Ramath Orah on Thursday. This Thursday, Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll be greeting the Prime Minister of Luxembourg here. He'll be coming, and we have a whole big celebration. There's a historic connection between Ramath Orah and Luxembourg, being the Luxembourg Jewish community. Ramath Orah means Luxembourg, for those who can translate it. So there's a connection, and he'll be coming here right before Rosh Hashanah, which is very nice and very inconvenient, but it is, so we will be greeting him. And the Gemara says you should always come and greet any king. And what's the reason for this? Im yizkeh, if one is fortunate, yavchin ben malachei Yisrael lemalchei ovdei kochavim. And one will see the difference in one day between the glory of the malachei Yisrael and the malachei akum. So I'd like to paraphrase that. And today we'll be learning about David HaMelech and his relationship with Yoav, his general. And I'm saying, im yizkeh, if we're fortunate, we'll see the difference between a Melech Yisrael and Melech Malchei Malachim. As in, hopefully that is our hope, to see through the reading of Sefer Shmuel a little bit about David and compare him to perhaps an all-powerful king. So I'm going to give that as a general framing, and we'll get back to that towards the end. So the title of today's learning session will be the relationship between David and Yoav. I'm going to give just a very short introduction, and then we'll just dive right into the text. There's a lot of text, and I will be reading it relatively quickly because I'm going to read it all in Hebrew, but you have the English translation with you right side by side. I cannot say anything about the English translation. I pulled it off the internet, and just that's it. So meaning, if you're going to follow the English, that's great as a helpful tool, but don't assume that there's any chokhmah here that I'm going to speak about. So let's just give a little bit of context where we are in the different parts of the story. Let's do a quick history. David becomes king, but not immediately king all of Israel. Once Shaul is killed in battle, David becomes king only of Yehudah, of the south, and Shaul's son, the only one who remains, Ishbosheth, is the king of the northern tribes. Most times people think that only after Shlomo was there a division of the northern and the southern tribe of Yehudah, but that division already pre-exists, meaning it already exists in David's time. It only just goes back to it after Shlomo. It's not, meaning the division between the northern tribes and the southern tribe is not something that is new after Shlomo, but actually is already in existence before. One should keep that in mind when learning Sefer Melachim. There's a lot to say about parallels between northern and southern states in the United States, but that's room for another conversation. But in any event, so this happens during this time. Ishbosheth is the king of the northern tribes, and his general is Avner. And then we have the southern tribe of Yehudah. The king is David, and his general is Yoav. And Yoav is going to be the focus of our learning today. Yoav is the general, and what we're going to learn together and try to figure out, what is the nature of this relationship? Because it's going to be very, very complicated, and we will be asking ourselves, how does David handle Yoav? Because that is going to be a big question for us. Like, if you were the king, how would you handle it? So maybe we'll have some participation. So let's begin. We're in source number 1, which is Shmuel Bet, Perek Gimel. We're in the beginning. Remember, there are two kingdoms. There's a northern kingdom. There's a southern kingdom. A backstory, before I didn't bring it here, we'll maybe touch on it later. There is a civil war happening. And this is not, they're not living peacefully. There is a battle between the northern tribes and the southern and Yehuda, to the point where in one of these battles, Yoav, he has two brothers, Avishai and Asael. The three of them seem to be the leaders of the military of Yehuda, and there is a battle between Yehuda and the northern tribe. In this battle, Avner, who's the general of the northern tribes, kills Asael, the brother of Yoav. In this battle, I'm just summarizing, just so that you have a little bit of the backstory here, that again, remember, Avner killed Yoav's brother. That is what you need to know. And now, this is what is happening. We are 3 chapters into the second part of Sefer Shmuel, which remember, Sefer Shmuel is one big book, but we divided it, or not we, but it was divided for convenience reasons into Shmuel Aleph and Shmuel Bet. We'll begin. Vatihi milchama aruka ben Bet Shaul uven Bet David. Vedavid holech vechazek uvet Shaul holchim vedalim. So the war is long, and David is getting stronger, and the house of Shaul is getting weaker. ויוולדו לדוד בנים בחברון, ויהי בכורו אמנון לאחינועם היזרעאלית, ומשנהו כלאב לאביגיל אשת נבל הכרמלי, והשלישי אבשלום בן מעכה בת תלמי מלך גשור, והרביעי אדוניה בן חגית, חמישי שפטיה בן אביטל, והשישי יתרם לעגלה אשת דוד. אלה יולדו לדוד בחברון. So why is this important? It's important because why are they telling us this? David is getting stronger, and then we have a list of all his sons. Usually when we have lots of sons, lots of wives, it shows that he is getting stronger, right? He is now becoming more and more of a king. Perhaps this is why this is mentioned right here. Of course, many of these sons will come up later in the story. Amnon, Avshalom, Adoniah, and so on. ויהי ביות המלחמה, אמן פסוק ו', בין בית שאול ובין בית דוד, ואבנר היה מתחזק בבית שאול. So even though the Bet Shaul is getting weaker, Avner is getting stronger within the household of Shaul. ולשאול פילגש ושמה רצפה בת היה. ויאמר אל אבנר, Madua bata el pilegesh avi. So now again, we don't have the background, but all of a sudden we're diving right into the story. Ish Boshet, who by the way is not mentioned here in the story, just says Vayomer. It doesn't even have a name. Some might say that this is already an indication of how weak the character is, that they don't even mention him. He says to Avner, who is that person? The guy who's not in control of anything. He, Vayomer Avner. So it seems that Shaul had a pilegesh, her name was Ritzpah, and Avner seems to be in a relationship with her. Again, remember that the idea of being with the wife of the king or the head of a household is not just a romantic relationship, but it also is, it shows power. Remember later on with Avshalom, where Avshalom sleeps with the Pilegshim of David. Remember, Reuven should be in the back of your mind also in Sefer Bereshit. So, of course, this is not just a little bit of this romantic relationship going on, but there's a little bit more, which is why Ishboshet says something. Vayichal Avner me'od ladivrei Ishboshet. So Avner gets very upset about this accusation. Vayomer harosh kelev anochi asher liYuda hayom eseh chesed im bet Shaul avicha elecha ve'el mereo ve'lo imtziticha biyad David v'tivkod alai avon ha'isha hayom. He says, very upset. He says, so who do you think you are? After all I've done for you? Avner is basically telling him, I'm the only reason you're here, that I didn't give you into the hands of David. Now you're going to come to me over this. You know what? I had enough. So that's it. Avner basically says to him that you're done. Ishboshet, that's it. I'm no longer supporting you. It's time to bring everyone bring them all to David. So what happens to Ishboshet? How does he respond? Remember the king? Again, he doesn't say even his name. He can't, he doesn't say anything, he is silent. So what does Avner do? Exactly what he said. Aretz lemor karta v'ritecha iti v'inei adi imach la'aseh v'lecha et kol Yisrael. Avner sees it That's his opportunity to bring all of Israel back together again. Remember, Avner was pretty much the reason why this war was happening, and now Avner changes his mind and wants to have peace with the southern kingdom, and now he brings them together. There's a lot to say. Like here, Avner is the one taking the initiative. It doesn't matter who the king is. The king is completely irrelevant in this peace treaty. Vayomer Tov. So he says, no problem. Let's do this. David, I'm in Pasuk Yud Gimel. Ani echrot itcha berit, ach davar echad anochi shoel mi'itecha lemor. But one thing I want, before we start this peace process, I want one thing from you. Lo tired panai ki im lifnei haviacha et Michal bat Shaul bevoacha lirot panai. But first, I want my wife, Michal bat Shaul. Now, one could think that this is because he loves her very much and he misses her after all these years, which is very possible. But another, of course, reading is very possible that, of course, marrying the daughter of Shaul, which is the king of the northern tribes which he's trying to merge with, would give him, of course, more legitimacy. I'll let you choose between those two readings, which one is more possible. Yudalet vayishlach David malachim el Ishboshet ben Shaul. So he sends messengers, David. Tonight, ishti et Michal asher erasti li b'mea olot plishtim. So he sends a message to the king, saying, "I want my wife," and somewhat kind of subtly reminding him about his military might. Remember how many people I killed to get this wife? Maybe there's a little bit of don't make me do this again to get this wife. There's maybe a little bit of where he's saying this. Vayishlach Ishboshet vayikachea me'im ish me'im Paltiel ben Laish. Vayelech ita isha haloch uvacho acharei ad bachurim vayomer alav Avner lech shuv vayashov. He takes Michal, and Michal is now returned. So now again, David is more legitimized in the eyes of everyone. It's a little cruel what is going on, but that's not our subject. Udvar Avner haya im ziknei Yisrael emo. So now Avner is already in speaking to the elders, and he says, "Gam tmol gam shishom meitem mevakshim David lemelech alachem." So now, interesting, you're getting this now. All this story that you didn't know, that actually the elders of Israel during this entire time were actually supportive of the idea of merging and having David as king. And who was the one that was stopping it? Avner. Meaning Avner was the one who was saying, no, we are loyal to Ishboshet. And now Avner finally says, you know what, you're right, let's do it. He stops, he is no longer stopping the merge, and he says to them, guys, it's time, you're right, let's do this, and let's put it together. Ve'ata, I'm in Pasuk Yudchet, Asu ki Hashem amar el David lemor, biyad David avdi Hoshea et ami, Israel miyad plishtim miyad kol ovehem vaydaber gam Avner b'oznei Binyamin. So now he speaks to everyone. Avner is getting everyone on board with this the plan of making David king for everyone, even the people of Binyamin. Remember, the Binyamin are the ones who are most loyal to Shaul. He gets them on board too. Vayelech Avner gam ledaber b'oznei David b'Chevron ve'et kol asher tov b'nei Israel u'b'nei kol bet Binyamin. So he gets everyone, right, and now everyone's all supportive of it. He finally goes to the big summit. Vayavo Avner el David Chevron. V'ito 20 anashim vayas David leAvner u'lanashav asher ito mishteh. It's a big mishteh, a party, a feast to show that they're excited. I'm moving on to the next page. Vayomer Avner el David akuma ve'elcha ve'kbetza el Adoni HaMelech et kol Yisrael v'yichretu itcha berit u'malachta b'chol asher ta'aveh nafshecha vayishlach David et Avner v'yelech b'shalom. So all we need to do is just sign the papers, but it seems that it's all done, it's all good, we're all coming together, let's just finish this off. Okay. Vayishlach David et Avner vayelech b'shalom. So he sends him off and he goes in peace. V'hinei avdei David v'Yoav ba mehagdud. So this is now, everything was fine. Everything seemed really great up until now, right? Everyone's on board, everyone's coming together, everyone's supportive. Avner is speaking to all the people on his side, and David welcomes them. They come to Hebron, they have a mishteh, all the photographers were there, they took pictures, and everyone's waiting for we just need to sign it. And then the troublemaker shows up. Yoav shows up from the Gdud, so he comes up from some kind of battle. Vishalal Rav, and he has all the spoils of the war with him. And Avner eneno im David bechevron ki shilcho. Now Avner is already gone, and Yoav now comes in, and Yoav finds out that in his absence, what happened? There was this peace treaty that happened. And he learns that Vayelech b'shalom. He learns that he came and he left in peace. V'Yoav v'chol hatzava asher ito ba'u v'yagidu leYoav lemor ba'Avner ben Ner el HaMelech Also, Yoav discovers that their enemy was here, and they had a peace treaty, and they were talking. What did you do? Now remember, there's also the sense of this is our enemy, but also Yoav, his brother, was killed by Avner. Remember. Now, do I think that David purposely invited Avner when Yoav was out? I'm being recorded, so I don't want to say everyone. Is it possible that you know that who is not going to be very supportive of this? You know who that person is. It might have been very convenient to have. Oh, he was out on some kind of a. All right. ידעת את אבנר בן נר כי לפתותך בה ולדעת את מועצתך מובאיך ולדעת את כל אשר אתה עושה. He says, no, Avner doesn't really want peace. He wants to know, he came, he's spying, he wants to know all of your weaknesses. ויצא יואב מדוד, David doesn't respond. He says to him, this guy's your enemy, you cannot trust him. David doesn't say anything back to him. Surprising. ויצא יואב מדוד, וישלח מלאכים אחרי אבנר. וישיבו אותו מבור הסירה, ודוד לא ידע. David doesn't know about all this, but now Yoav sends messengers to Avner, come back. וישב אבנר חברון. Remember, Avner has no reason to think that anyone is, he just came back, there was a big mishteh, there's a peace treaty, and everyone is supportive of it, and Avner is clueless, does not know what is going to happen, and maybe some of you don't either, but now you'll find out. He comes back, in Pasuk Kav Zayin, וישב אבנר חברון, ויתהו יואב אל תוך השער לדבר איתו בשלי, ויכהו שם החומש, וימות בדם עשאל אחיו. And what does Yoav do? He brings Avner back and he kills him. As avenging his brother's death, he kills. Now you can imagine, this is the best way to kill the peace treaty. Now, there's the aspect, of course, of his brother being killed by Avner, but there's also maybe he really doesn't trust the other side. But there's also the idea of you're in a merged two kingdoms. Someone's going to lose their job. You do realize that, right? Someone is not. No, we all know who's going to be the king. But the question is, who's going to be the general? Especially remember the general who is supported, and clearly has a lot of influence over the northern kingdom. There is also a personal rivalry here, and Yoav. It says it here explicitly that it's because of his brother, and let's assume that is the reason. But what happens now? What about this entire peace process that was going on? What are people going to think? What's going to happen? Remember, the general of David, who just invited, and there was all this peace talks, now just kill the other general. The whole thing can blow up. וישמע דוד מאחריכן, ויאמר נקי אנוכי ממלכתי מעם השם, עד עולם מדמי אבנר בן נר. He says, no, I had nothing to do with this. יאכלו לו על ראש יואב ולכל לבית אביו, ואל יכרת מבית יואב זב ומצורע ומחזיק בפלך ונופל בחרב וחסר לחם. He curses Yoav. And he says his family for all of eternity will be weak, and so on. Very terrible curses. There's a repetition here, but that's probably because of the composition of Shmuel, which we're not going to talk about. There are multiple sources of Shmuel, but there is a repetition which I'm not going to get into right now. But the idea, again, is repeated. Pasuk Lamed Aleph, ויאמר דוד אל יואב ואל כל העם אשר איתו, קרעו בגדיכם וחיגרו שקים וסיבדו לפני אבנר, והמלך דוד הולך אחרי המיטה, ויקברו את אבנר בחברון, וישא המלך את קולו, ויבך קבר אבנר, ויבכו כל העם, ויקונן המלך לאבנר, ויאמר so now so David has to show up to the funeral, and he has to make a very, very big spectacle of this, because he has to make sure that everyone knows that this was not his plan. He did not want to kill Avner, because if anyone thinks or suspects him, then the entire peace treaty is going to fall apart. So of course he goes there and he eulogizes him, and he says, "Yadecha lo asurot, raglecha lo nuchoshtaim hugashu, ki im po lifnei bnei Avner nafalta, v'yosifu kol ha'am livkot alav, v'yavo kol ha'am la'avrot et David lechem be'od hayom." So all the people come to console David and to give him bread. Vayishava David lemor, ko yaseh li Elohim v'cho yosif. So he says, he makes a very public statement, I'm fasting. Everyone now realizes or knows that David had nothing to do with this. And all the people realize, yes, David is sincere. He really did not want anything to do with this murder of Avner. ויאמר המלך אל עבדיו, הלא תדעו כי שר וגדול נפל היום הזה בישראל, ואנוכי היום רך ומשוח מלך, ואנשים האלה בני צוריה קשים ממני, ישלם השם ועושה הרע כרעתו. And he ends again by this cursing of the bnei Tzuriya, which is Yoav and his brother. Well, his brother's not mentioned in the explicit killing, but later on he is mentioned. But let's assume that they do it together. And David is now, no one suspects him anymore. But remember, he curses Yoav. Now, you were the king. Your general almost jeopardized the merging of the kingdoms of Israel coming together. What do you do to Yoav? What do you do to Yoav? No. You shouldn't. You and your children should all be metzoraim. Because you tell me that's pretty much what David does. Yoav still has his job. I'm just telling you, this is a very strange thing. Assassinating can you imagine this? Now, David gets away with it, right? And if you look, there's a famous Gemara, and I brought it to you in source number 2, but you don't have to read it. But again, where David has to go through, and the Gemara explains how David is a very, the people, the Gemara, is a midrash, but I think it really captures the essence of the spirit of what's going on, is that the people are very angry at David. And they either think that he was involved or assume that he's involved in some way. But David ultimately is able to smooth this out with the people. But again, it really jeopardized the whole idea of him being king of bringing everyone together. And Yoav almost ruined the entire thing. And what does David do? Nothing. Harsh words, right? That's really. I think we can all see somewhat of a surprise of what's going on here. All right, now if this was it, okay, let's say maybe one mistake. This is not the first, not the last time that Yoav, well, in this case, he didn't defy the orders; he just did whatever he wanted. But now we're going to see that Yoav, not once and not twice, but 3 times at least, where he goes against David. And let's continue. So we're in source number 3. We're in Shmuel Bet, and we're going to go through Palakim Yud Chet and Yud Tet quickly. All right. Vayifkod David et ha'am asher ito. Okay, so now just to fill in the gaps here. In the meantime, the whole story, David became king, and everything was great, and everything was good until Chet David Batsheva, and then everything went downhill from then. And Avshalom then rebels against his father. David and all his people need to run away. And Yoav, who is extremely loyal to David throughout this entire time, and stays with him. And now they're in hiding, and they have to go and to a different place. And while Avshalom is now the king, but now finally there's a war between the loyals of those who are loyal to David and those who are loyal to Avshalom. Yoav is now going to war on the David side, of course, and Avshalom has his own army. And now, before they go to war, David has some words that he wants to tell his generals, and he has a general. There are Yoav and Avishai, the 2 brothers that we saw earlier, and another guy called Ittai. So those are the 3, and Avshalom has a general called Amasa, which we'll see later, because it's very relevant to the story. But let's see what happens. Again, we're in source number 3. Those who are following with the Tanakh, we're in Sefer Shmuel Bet, Perek Yud Chet, Pasuk Aleph. Vayifkod David et ha'am asher ito, vayasem alehem sarei alafim v'sarei me'ot. וישלח דוד את העם השלישית ביד יואב, השלישית ביד אבישי בן צוריה, אחי יואב, והשלישית ביד איתי הגיתי, ויאמר המלך אל העם, יצא אצא גם אני עמכם. So he divides the army into 3. Why into 3? Oh, so this is just, everyone should know, as a general rule, this happens a lot in Tanakh military moves, where they divide into 3, so they can attack in 3. Why not attack in 4? Would it make sense to attack in 4? Then you can surround them all around, in all directions. Wouldn't that be better? If you're trying to trap a mouse, where would you? Only 3, they'll run away, right? How is that helpful? The answer is yes. In a war, you do want to attack, allow them to run away, because if you don't, they're going to fight to the death. Whereas if you allow them to flee, then it's easier to ultimately defeat them. If the purpose is not to kill every single one of them, but to win the war, then you don't want to. You want to allow them to escape, and that way you would win perhaps easier when they have somewhere to go. But that was a side point. That's not really relevant to us right now. Pasuk Gimel. So the king says, David says, I want to go with you. Vayomer ha'am lo tetzeh. No, you can't go. Kim nos lo yasimu eleinu lev, v'im yamutu chetzienu lo yasimu eleinu lev, ki ata chamonu 10 alafim, v'ata tov ki tieh lanu me'ir la'azor. They said, no, you're too valuable. You cannot go with us. You stay at home, and we're just going to go to the war. So now David is not there to supervise what actually happens in the battle, and that is extremely important for the next point. Why does he really want to go, David? Because this is why. Because David is very concerned about them killing Avshalom, which of course is his son. And he does not want his son to get killed. ויאמר עליהם המלך, אשר איתה ביניכם אעשה, ויעמוד המלך אל השער, וכל העם יצאו למאות ולאלפים. ויצב המלך את יואב, ואת אבישי, ואת איתי לאמור, לאט לי לנער לאבשלום, וכל העם שמעו בצוות המלך את כל השרים על דבר אבשלום. He makes it very clear to the generals, in front of everyone else, do not harm Avshalom. You realize it's a very difficult command, because Avshalom is the enemy, and he says, I don't want him dead. Maybe this relates to a little bit what we saw earlier with Rabbi Angel about the idea of like this some kind of honor between the two generals, but the two leaders. But also, it's his son. He said, no, don't kill my son. Don't kill. Bring him back alive. But all right, and he says it to everyone, so it's very clear. Everyone knows what David wants. ויצא העם השדה, לקראת ישראל ותהיה מלחמה ביער אפרים, וינגפו שם עם ישראל לפני עבדי דוד, ותהי שם מגפה גדולה ביום ההוא 20,000. So clearly, the David side is winning. ותהי שם מלחמה. נפוצת על פני כל הארץ, וירב היער לאכול בעם, מאשר אכלה החרב ביום ההוא. I'm not going to get into the details of the war, but again, clearly the people of David are winning. ויקרא אבשלום לבני עבדי דוד, ואבשלום רוכב על הפרד, ויבוא הפרד תחת סובך האלה הגדולה, ויחזק ראשו באלה, ויותם בין השמיים ובין הארץ, והפרד אשר תחתיו עבר. So Avshalom is on this mule, and his hair, his long hair, gets stuck in the thicket, and now he's somewhat being hung by his hair. Is very the imagery is very interesting. He's like between the sky and the ground. But again, we're trying to focus on Yoav here. So again, now Avshalom is stuck. Basically, he's stuck, and now he's an easy target. וירא איש אחד, ויגד ליואב, אמן פסוק י'. ויאמר הנה ראיתי את אבשלום תלוי באלה. He says, I found Avshalom. ויאמר יואב לאיש המגיד לו. So Yoav says to the guy, הנה ראית מדוע לא הכיתו שם ארצה? ועלה לתת לך 10 כסף וחגור אחד. He said, you saw him, you didn't kill him? He says, if you would have killed him, I would have given you so much money from the spoils of the war. So now I should give you a reward for killing him. Why are you telling me that there he is? So what does the guy say? ויאמר האיש אל יואב, פסוק י"ב. ולו אנוכי שוקל על כפיי 1,000 כסף. If you would give me 1,000 silver pieces, לא אשלח ידי אל בן המלך, כי באוזנינו ציווה המלך אותך ואת אבישי ואת איתי לאמור, שמרו מי ונער ואבשלום. We all heard the king say, do not touch him. It doesn't matter how much money you'll give me. I can't do it. או עשיתי בנפשי שקר, וכל דבר לא יגחם מן המלך. So he says, the king said, I'm moving on page number 4, תתייצב מנגד, ויאמר יואב, לא כן אוכילה לפניך. Yoav's not convinced by this, the fact that the king said, don't kill my son. He says, I'm not listening to you. And Yoav says, all right. In other words, okay, thank you so much. Yoav says, ויקח 3 שבטים בכפו, ויתקיים בלב אבשלום, עודנו חי בלב האלה. Comes Yoav and stabs him in the heart while Avshalom is stuck in the tree, against what David said explicitly, which is very clear that the soldiers understood that they shouldn't do this. Is not he does this also very, very publicly, right? This is not. And what is it? ויסובו 10 נערים נוסק ליואב, ויכו את אבשלום וימיתוהו, ויתקע יואב בשופר, וישב העם ירדוף אחרי ישראל. So again, he blows his shofar. That's it. The war is over, right? כי חסך יואב את העם. So that's it. He's wanted the war to end, and it's a very important part. He says, that's it. The war is over. No more killing. We don't need any more killing. We got rid of the problem. Avshalom is dead. We don't have to continue this war anymore. ויקחו את אבשלום וישליכו אותו ביער אל הפחת הגדול, ויציבו עליו גל אבנים גדול מאוד, וכל ישראל נסו איש לאוהליו. So now, again, we have... So the war is over. Yoav kills Avshalom against the orders of David. I skipped many psukim. Ultimately, the messenger comes to David and tells him that Avshalom was killed. I'm going to skip to pasuk Aleph of Perek Yutet. וארגז המלך ויעל אל יד השער ויבך, וכה אמר בלכתו בני אבשלום, בני אבשלום, מי ייתן מותי אני תחתיך אבשלום בני. Again, David doesn't care about the fact that he won the war. Doesn't care about the fact that the people that fought for him, and he is just crying over the fact that his son died. ויוגד ליואב, הנה המלך בוכה ויתאבל על אבשלום. So now Yoav is told that the king is mourning his son. ותהיה תשועה ביום ההוא לאבל לכל העם, כי שמע העם ביום ההוא לאמור נאצף המלך על בנו. So now you realize now everyone lost. The people of Israel lost because they literally lost. The people of David, they lost because their king is sad. And now, what was the whole purpose? Now you realize now the frustration of Yoav, who just went out to war with his men to win this war for their king. And now their king is sad and upset that they won. Which of course is exactly what Yoav was going to say to him. Pasuk Daled. The people are embarrassed to come back from war. The victors are embarrassed to come back because now of what happened. It's a public crying. ויבוא יואב אל המלך הבית, ויאמר הובשת היום את פני כל עבדיך ממלטים את נפשך היום ואת נפש בניך ובנותיך ונפש נשיך ונפש פלגשיך לאהבה את שונאיך ולשנוא את אוהביך כי הגעת היום כי אין לך שרים ועבדים כי ידעתי היום כי לו אבשלום חי וכולנו היום מתים כי אז ישר בעיניך. He says to him, King, excuse me, you would rather us all die but your son, what's the whole point of this? What did we do? Right? You're embarrassing us, right? And then it says in Pasuk Chet, Va'ata kum tzeh. Enough of this. Go out there and speak to your people. Daber elev avadecha, ki va'ashem nishbati ki encha yotzeh, ki mialin ish itcha alayla, ve'ra'a lecha zot mikol hara asher ba'a lecha menurecha adata. If you don't get out there and address the people and make this right, it's going to be much worse than anything you've ever had before. This is already Yoav threatening the king. If not directly, very indirectly, saying you better get out there and speak to them, and enough of this crying over the enemy dying. And he does. David somewhat pulls himself together, and he does. But what does he do? He goes out, and remember, he needs to now bring everyone together. There's civil war. Now David is again the king, where there were a lot of people supporting Avshalom. He starts sending out messages to everyone, wants to bring the people back together. So I skipped over the psukim. But now he's trying to against payback time against Yoav. Remember, Yoav now killed Avner. Yoav now killed his son, which you're assuming right at this point that David knows about this. Ulamasa tomeru. So now he sends a message, and he says this to the Kohanim, to Tzadok and Eviatar. He says, please send a message to the general of Avshalom that lost the war. Tomru halo atzmi uvesari ata ko yaseh li Elohim v'cho yosif im lo sar tzava. He says, let's now bring everyone together. Amasa, the enemy, the general of the enemy, but still part of Israel. I want you to be the new general instead of Yoav. This is now David's way, and perhaps trying to replace Yoav. Again, does he punish Yoav for killing his son against direct orders? No. But what does he do? Tries to somewhat kill two birds with one stone. How am I going to, in some ways, appease the other side and like merging the two kingdoms by taking their general and making him my general, at the same time also getting rid of Yoav, who we cannot trust, who doesn't listen to him. So that's what David is trying to do. And does this work? No, it doesn't. It doesn't work. And we'll see, it really backfires. But again, you have to be asking yourself, why is it David doesn't do anything against... Why doesn't he get rid of Yoav, right? This is Yoav, this guy, he's out of control, right? He does whatever he wants. He goes out there and he kills the general of the party that they're trying to make peace with. He goes out and he kills Avshalom against the direct orders, and the soldiers all know that it's against the direct orders. He walks into the king's office and says, hey, if you don't get yourself together here, I'm going to make sure that this is going to be the worst day of your life. This is what he says to him. And what does David do? Nothing. Or this time he does. Yeah, we're going to make Amasa the general, and you are not going to be general anymore. By the way, David doesn't say this directly to Yoav. Yoav maybe finds out about this in the paper in the morning. By the way, there's new appointees, the new government, the new Memshelet Achdut of Avshalom and David. And by the way, Yoav, you don't have a job anymore. He doesn't confront Yoav. He never confronts Yoav. No, you guys, how is this possible? Why? Why does he not confront him? So good, if you're all frustrated and you're asking yourself, how is this possible? Let's do the last one, and maybe we'll find the punch at the end. Okay? We're in source number 4, which is in page number 4. And now this is the last chapter of Sefer Shmuel, before the appendixes at the end of Sefer Shmuel, which are like 4 chapters, which are kind of like some stories that we forgot to mention, and a mizmor, and we'll just throw them in together at the end, which are not in chronological order. But this is like the ending of Sefer Shmuel, right here, Perek Kaf. And this is the last rebellion, which is a man called Sheva ben Bichri of Binyamin. So even though we brought everyone together and it seems that, we're done and now it's one big happy Israelite family, unfortunately this pretty much never happens during the time of David. He's either with Ishboshet and then his son and then Sheva ben Bichri. There are always these internal struggles during the entire time of David. So there's this man, Sheva ben Bichri, a Benjamite, Vesham nikra ish blial ushmo Sheva ben Bichri ish yemini. Vayitka b'shofar vayomer en lanu chelek b'David v'lo nachala b'ben Ishai ish lo alav Israel. They do not accept David as the king and they rebel against him. Vayal kol ish Israel machore David. But now there's a lot of support for David. Acharei Sheva ben Bichri, v'ish Yehuda davku b'malkam min hayarden ve'ad Yerushalayim. And the people of Yehuda are all now supportive of David. This is important because the people of Yehuda were the first to turn on David with Avshalom, which is again a separate issue. ויבוא דוד אל ביתו ירושלים, ויקח המלך את 10 נשים פלגשים אשר הניח לשמור הבית, ויתנם בית משמרת, ויקלקלם, ועליהם לא בא. So this is a side note about what he did with his concubines. ותהיינה צורות עד יום מותן, אלמנות חיות. So this is just a side note that, remember, Avshalom slept with the concubines, so David is no longer with him. ויאמר המלך אל עמסה. So now the king needs to squash this rebellion, which is led by Sheva ben Bichri. So he calls his new general. And who's his new general now? Amasa, right? Because he appointed him. So he says to Amasa, Haz'ek li et ish Yehuda, shloshet yamim ve'ata po amod. He says, you have 3 days. I want you here with all the people because we are going to war. Vayelech Amasa la'azik et Yehuda, vayochel min ha'moed asher ya'ado. Amasa is not there after 3 days. The king said, 3 days, you're here with all the people, and he's not there. Why was he not there? Maybe the weather was bad. I don't know. Maybe transportation. Maybe the MTA was on strike. Why was he not there? No, he didn't get killed. No. Well, so it doesn't say why. But I'm assuming the reason is because he wasn't able to gather the people to come. Is it very easy to get into the people to now join the general who, by the way, was just your enemy just a moment ago, and now to come, he's supposed to gather you for war? You can see how the people are not necessarily so enthusiastic about joining this new general who they, just a moment ago, was from the other party. Yeah?
His translations say that the opposite, that he stayed longer than he appointed.
So when you say again, I don't know the translation. He stayed longer, meaning he gave him 3 days, and he took more than 3 days to come back. Meaning he said to him, "You have 3 days. Gather the people. I want you here." And now he wasn't there after 3 days. So now David doesn't know what to do. Like we have a war. The general's not here. The people are not here. What do we do? Vayoma David. So now David has no choice. He has to go back to his default. And who's his default?
Yoav.
So Yoav, but he can't go back to Yoav, right? But what does he do? He goes back to the other option, which is also not his ideal one, which is Yoav's brother, Avishai. Vayomer David Avishai, Ata yeranu l'sheva ben Bichri min Avshalom. This is going to be worse if we don't take care of this now. We're going to wait another week, but then now Sheva ben Bichri is going to gather more people, and it's going to be a mess. We got to do this now. So what does he do? He says to Avishai, because David can't go to Yoav. So he goes to Avishai and he says to him, Ata yeranu l'sheva ben Bichri min Avshalom, Ata kachna et avdei adonecha. Who is he speaking about? Take avdei adonecha, Avishai. Who is adonecha? Yoav. Udof acharav pen matzalo arim betzurot v'etzid denenu. He says, listen, Avishai, gather Yoav's people and go. We got it. We can't wait for this Amasa to do it. Vayetzu acharav anshe Yoav. So now it's very clear, right? The people of Yoav. The people of Yoav go with Avishai. V'hakriti v'hapliti v'chol hagiborim vayetzu miYerushalayim l'rdof acharei Sheva ben Bichri. They are ready to move, and they go. Hem ima even agdola asher begivon ve'amasa ba lifnehem. All of a sudden, they come. They're on their way, and who shows up? Amasa, who was late too, and v'yoav chagur mido levusho ve'alav chagor cherev mutzmedet al motnav beta'ara v'hu yatsa vatipol vayomer Yoav la'amasa hashalom lech ata achi. So now Yoav and Amasa, it's very awkward, right? It's kind of awkward. So Yoav, who was fired from his previous position, is now, while not officially appointed, all his people are the ones going to war for David. And the Goan who is supposed to do the job is now coming like a day late, showing up, and now they're meeting on the way. It's a little awkward. but Yoav makes sure that this is not awkward. What does Yoav do? He says, he doesn't want it to be awkward, so he comes over and he greets him. He says, "Oh, how are you?" And what does he do? Shalom lechati vatoches yad yamin Yoav. So, he holds his hand, bizkan amasal in shoklo. So he takes him, holds his beard, to give you a kiss. But, amasal lo nishma b'cherev asher b'yad Yoav, but Amasal was not careful. Vayakeu ba el hachomesh, vayishpoch me'av arza velo shana lo vayamot. V'Yoav Avishai achiv radav acharei Sheva ben Bichri. Yoav does not think twice. Yoav, while he gives a kiss to Amasal, stabs him once. He didn't have to do it more than once. His guts are spill out, and he kills him right there. That's what Yoav does. The general of David, third strike. Done. All right? Ve'ish amad alav. So what happens? Now the man, one of the soldiers, stands on the body, or at least next to the body of Amasal min arei Yoav, one of the Yoav loyalists. Vayomer, mi asher chafetz biYoav, umi asher leDavid, acharei Yoav. We are all now going to war, because remember now, presumably Amasal had people with him that he gathered, right? So now he says, if you're loyal to David, we're all following Yoav. The Amasal mitgolel bedama b'toch hamsila. Amasal is bleeding out. Vayar ha'ish ki amad kol ha'am vayasev et Amasal min hamsila sadeh vayishlech alav beged kasher ra'a kol haba alav ve'amad. So he saw that this Amasal is distracting, because people are saying, was this so he pushes him over, covers him, and says, just cast him aside, and that's it. Everyone's following Yoav now. This Amasal was very quickly, they got over him. That's it, they pushed him aside, put something over him, and we're all after Yoav. So everyone now joins Yoav again. Yoav is back. And now everyone gets excited. Everyone comes with him. They go out to war. They're able to capture the city with Sheva ben Bichri. And he's there. And the story is that they're now surrounded. They have a siege around the city. And there's a wise woman. And the wise woman says, "Hey, what do you want, Yoav? Oh, you want to kill everyone? Why? Because of this one guy, Sheva ben Bichri? How about we give him to you? We'll kill him for you. Leave us alone." And Yoav says, "Good idea. All right, fine. No problem. Give us the head of Sheva ben Bichri, and we'll leave you alone." And that's what happens in Pasuk Kavbet. Vatavo isha kol ha'am bechokmata. She convinces them, guys, let's give up Sheva ben Bichri. Let's kill him so that the rest of us will survive. Vayichretu et rosh Sheva ben Bichri vayashlichu al Yoav. They give him the head of Sheva, and Yoav again blows the shofar. Vayafutzu me'al ha'ir ish le'ohalav v'Yoav shav Yerushalayim el hamelech. And look at this. Can you imagine the surprise of David? David sends Amasal to gather an army to go to war. Amasal doesn't show up. David reluctantly tells Avishai to gather. And what happens? David, who comes back, marching back, and the head of the army, leading it? Yoav is back. Oh, Yoav is back. And if you want to know how it's official, Yoav is back, this is how the book ends. When it gives who is the cabinet of Yoav, of David. This is from Pasuk Gimel. It gives us all of the different people who are the positions in the army or in the government. V'Yoav el kol hatzava Israel. Yoav is the leader of the military. Uvnaya ben Yehoyada al hakriti v'al hapliti, and Benayahu is on the other warriors. V'Adoram al Hamas v'Shafat ben Achilud Hamazkir u'Sheva haSofer v'Tzadok v'Vital Kohanim v'Gam Ira haYairi haya Chohen leDavid. And it gives us the whole list of who his cabinet is and who is the general at the end of Sefer Shmuel. Yoav is back. Now, I have to ask you, how is this possible? Three times, Yoav goes against what the king says, and not like small things. Again, not small things. Okay? He kills two generals and his son. Now, David is no response, by the way, right? No response, ever. David never responds to Yoav after any of these things. Pretty much accepts it. How is it possible? How does he accept it? Now, I should mention this. Yoav, first of all, human life is very important to Yoav. Yoav is always interested, and this happens all the time. Yoav will stop the war the moment he has the opportunity, and we see 3 times where he blows the shofar, he says, "That's it, we're done, no more bloodshed." He's not interested in just killing for the sake of killing. We saw this once in the war with Avshalom. The moment he kills Avshalom, he says, that's it. We're done. The war is over. Then he is able to get Sheva ben Bichri. He says, we're not killing any more people. And this happens even with the war with Avner, which we skipped over. It's you can see this in source number 5. Shmuel Bet, Perek Bet. This is when we were fighting, remember? And this is, Yoav, this is personal for him. Because Avner just killed his brother. And they're in war with Avner. Remember, this is now in Perek Bet, so we're going a little bit out of chronological order. Vayikra Avner el Yoav, vayomer halanetzach tochal cherev. Halo yadata ki mara tiyeh v'acharona, ad matay lo tomar la'am lashum acharei achehem. There's a war against Avner. Avner calls out to Yoav and says, Yoav, enough of this war. Vayomer Yoav, chay Elohim, ki lulei dibarta, ki az me'aboker na'ala ha'am, ish ma'acharei achiv, vayitka Yoav b'shofar. So Yoav says, okay, enough is enough. Yoav stops the war, even though, again, remember, his brother was just killed by Avner, but he listens to it, he realizes, enough is enough, and he doesn't want any more war against his own people. Remember, Yoav, in that sense, we have to give him that credit, that he cares a lot about his people, and also the enemy, at least when the enemy is Israel. Meaning, this is in all these times. Yeah?
But he blows up a peace treaty by murdering.
Oh, yeah, yes, he does. It's true, he does. Yes. Correct. Yeah, he does. But to his credit, he truly believes, at least that's what he says, that there is no peace treaty. Meaning they only want more war. And yes, it's also convenient that he killed his brother, but at least that's what he says. And I have no reason, but I assume that if the text tells us that that's what he said, that's what he thought. Now, there's also another reason, which is why also, I know there's some more modern scholars, David actually also wanted him to do it. I don't think so. If the text is telling us, when the text wants to tell us what David does wrong, believe me, the text does not, especially Shefa Shmuel, is able to tell us exactly what David did wrong, and they don't shy away from it. If they tell us that David really did not want Avner to be killed, I don't think he wanted to be killed. And when Yoav says, Avner is here to be a spy, I truly believe that that's what he thought. Now, does it justify killing him against the orders of the king who just said not to? No. And it definitely doesn't explain why David has no problem with, or at least cannot do anything against Yoav so many times. Yeah, Anne.
Well, I think Yoav is popular with people, and David has that instinct.
All right. Okay. So I think that's what ultimately. And this is the point I want to get to, but I want to see when you say he's popular with people, the question is, how does that happen? How does that come to be?
He shows strength and...
Okay, so I think it's a lot more than shows strength, but 100% that all of a sudden we come to the realization that the king is not all powerful. And I think that is there's one thing that we learned from all these chapters, is that this idea that, the king can come and do whatever he wants, you realize even in the king of Israel, or in ancient times, where the king can come and and execute anyone they want, and that's all powerful. No, the king is not all powerful. The king still needs to deal with politics, and we'll see in the text there are certain hints to this, that the king cannot do anything they want, and that Yoav really holds perhaps equal power to the king, and we'll see how this plays out and where the biblical author really makes notes of this in the text. I will mention that Yoav ultimately doesn't get away with it completely. He ultimately is settled after David's lifetime. You can see this here, we're not going to read it, but in Melachim Bet, of course, he tells his son, Shlomo, by the way, Yoav, you got to take care of him. He's not good business. And Shlomo is able to take care of it. But again, this is not during David's lifetime, and this is probably after Yoav's peak, which probably explains why he was able to do it. But the question really is why David was not able to do anything before. And I'd like to note, and we have a few more minutes, note a comment, which this is by a Bible scholar by the name of Arnold Ehrlich. It's not very known because he's not going to be found in the Mikrot Gedolot or any other, let's say, religious book for that matter. He's a very controversial individual. He actually was here in New York. He passed away 100 years ago here in New York. He, I guess one of his big, he taught Tanakh at Temple Emmanuel here in New York. And I guess his big claim to fame was that he was the teacher of Mordechai Kaplan, so of a Tanakh. But he wrote a Perush on the Tanakh called Mikra Kivshuto. And you can find it online, not on Hebrew books. I don't think they put it there. But definitely on like Google Books, you can just download all three volumes, and they are very interesting. He has some unique comments, and he's very sensitive to words and versions and so on. For those of you who would like, you can just find it, and it's very, very interesting. What? You'll have it in the source sheets. It's right here, source number 7. I brought you two parts of it, and he notes 2 points which we kind of glossed over when we were reading, and he says those are key points that you cannot miss. And if you understand that, you will understand everything. And he points out to, if you remember, in the first source we were reading, and I made note of it then, David calls Avner to come for the peace talks. Yoav is not there. And then the text tells us that Yoav came back. Now the text could have just said, Yoav wasn't there. I don't know, he went to visit his brother-in-law. No, but the text says Yoav wasn't there because he was out in battle and he was busy doing what? Shalal Rav Imam Heviu. He was distributing all of the spoils of war. Oh. So Erlich comes along and says, listen, and I'm going to read it here in the source number 7. It's in Hebrew. I'm going to translate it as I read. Kvar amarti lecha. I've already told you, the reader, she'en davar rek bechol kitvei hakodesh. Oh, this is like a very religious statement, but he's not saying it's a religious statement, but as much as an author. He says, if they're telling you something, if the text is making point of something, it's not, there's a reason for it. Ve'im tomar ma'inyan hashalal hazeh lekan. What do I care what they were doing? He says it's important. Da shehu nizkar al shem sof ha'maaseh. This is important for later. La'agid lecha lama lo nakam David nikmat Avner bayom hahu. Af lo kol yemei chayav. He says, you know why David didn't do anything for his entire life? Lo met Yoav bidmei Avner ad shemet David u'malach Shlomo b'nei tachtav. He didn't do anything until later on. Ki halo yadata hachok b'Yisrael shekol ha'eda haya chelkam bashalal kechelak hayodim b'milchama. Umiyimot olam ad hayom hazeh hakesef ya'aneh et hakol. He says since then until today, you know what was the most important factor is money. He says money or property, whatever it is. Umatan kesef yarbe re'im. And giving out money, you get a lot of friends. Ubiglal hadavar hazeh gibor chayil mechalek shalal rav haya ratzui lerov achav. He says one who would distribute the spoils of the war. Very popular. People really liked him. Vehu shamar David b'kina asher konel Shaul, and that's what David said. Benot Yisrael el Shaul b'chena hama b'shchem shani. So this is known that kings would give out spoils of war. Ki mipnei shaya Shaul malbish et benot Yisrael, because Shaul would give the daughters of Israel shani mishlal oivav ahavu oto b'chayav u'bachru alav b'moto ki zeh kol ha'adam. He says this is why people like to get presents, they get things, they like him. That's how it works. Lachen mazkir hakatuv dvar hashalal harav shevi Yoav min hagdud. That's why the author mentions all of the spoils that Yoav brought from the war. La'agid lecha shebe'ot hashalal shechalak Yoav la'am haya ratzui lahem. Because people, they liked it. V'David shaya melech chadash lo matzat levavo la'amit et Yoav b'dmei Avner mi'irato she'ira davar b'nei ha'am v'imredu bo. Says if he gets rid of Yoav is the popular person. Yoav is the guy who writes their checks at the end of David can't afford to lose someone like this. This is the rule. En zichron dvarim belo roshem. There's no mentioning of anything that doesn't make an impact. If you don't understand the context here, you have to see where this is important for another story. You need to figure out, if they're giving you a detail, there is importance for that detail, and you need to figure it out. And he continues later on at the end of the book. He says it again, and this is in source number 8, and with this will end. Mi asher chafetz b'Yoav. So this is when Yoav, again clearly Yoav makes his comeback. When he goes out to war as a common soldier and just comes back to Jerusalem as the general, he says, "Hachafetz lahavin dvarim ha'ele al boyam." Anyone who wants to understand these things thoroughly, yizko ma she'amarti lamala. You remember what I wrote earlier? She'Yoav harag et Amasa mipnei she'bara ba'esh kin'ato v'lo yachol lirot biyoto Amasa sar tzava tachtav. ולדבר הזה מכוון האיש מנערי יואב. הוא רוצה לאמור, מי החפץ ביואב לשר הצבא, ואין בליבו עליו אשר הרג את המסע שהיה עתיד להיות שר הצבא תחתיו. So he says that Yoav was jealous about the fact that Amasa became the new general, and this is what the person said, that whoever doesn't mind or is okay with the fact that Yoav just killed the new general, then join me. ועל פי הדברים האלה הלך יואב עם החיל הזה מירושלים כאחד מהם. If you understand this, you realize that Yoav went to battle like one of the troops. Remember, Yoav was the general. David replaced him, Yoav didn't say, okay, I'm retiring. I'm going to sit home and watch Birdwatch from now on for the rest of my life. No, Yoav went to war with his soldiers as a soldier. And this, now, ultimately he becomes the general, but meaning the loyalty and the sense that people, right, you see how the people are loyal to him, right? But he wouldn't do this in front of the king. But once they see him, the people see him as their leader. Ultimately, he's the one who's ruling. He's the one that's leading everything. He's the one that has the conversation with the woman in the siege. ולב יואב בטוח שבשומר ירושלים בראש החיל וראש שבע בן בכרי בידו לא ימצא דוד את ליבו לאמור מדוע עשית ככה בעל כורחו יענה אמן. He knows that he's going to show up with the head of Sheva ben Bechri into Jerusalem and David cannot say a thing. That is it. And if you see here, I'm just going to read this at the end just because it's and he says, right, Yoav shav Yerushalayim HaMelech, Yoav comes back to the king. And בלשון הזה בכל המקרא, there's nowhere else in the entire Bible. כאמור הכתוב הזה אל המלך הוא בא להגיד לך שלא היה יואב ירא מראות פני המלך. Yoav did not fear coming before the king. All of a sudden, as the general, even though he just replaced him just a moment ago, he had no problem. והיה לב יואב בטוח, Yoav was certain שלא יקרנו עוון בדבר המסע. He knew that nothing would happen to him, even though he just killed the general. אף לא על אשר נכנס תחת אבישי אחיו, even though he replaced his brother. It was שהפקיד דוד ללכת לפני החיל הזה. כי הלא ראש שבע בן בכרי בידו, because the head of the enemy was in his hand. ואף האנשים הרבים שנתווספו אל החיל הזה, 1 minute. And all the people that joined him, מכל מקום מה שעבר ללכת אבל לבית מעכה, עדים בדבר שלב כל העם אחרי יואב. All the people are following Yoav. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what David says. The people are after Yoav. וכל אשר יחפוץ יעתנו. And anyone, whatever he wants, he's going to do. והאיש שככה לו, and anyone who the people are so supportive of, גם המלך יירא מנגוע בו לרע. Even the king cannot do anything. Oh, I think this is when you realize this, so the weakness of the David is so evident in the book of Shmuel. He cannot do anything against Yoav. Yoav has the support of the people. It does not matter. Now, we're lucky that Yoav, and this to his credit, is extremely loyal to David. Extremely loyal, perhaps not to David as an individual, but to David as the king. And therefore, everything he does is in support of David as king, and for the kingdom, and for the people. Which is why it works in a certain way. It works because Yoav always wants what's best for the people, even though it's against David's personal interests. Every single time. But David cannot, and I believe David would want to, but he cannot. Now, I think we all are aware of and maybe, I hope this wasn't very clear, and I try not to share politics, but you do realize that sometimes there are forces within political systems. There are certain people that bring the voters out. And even you might not like anything that they say or they do, but there are forces you have to reckon with. Is David one of those tragic figures that cannot root out the problems in his own kingdom, and the next generation, when now he doesn't have the influence anymore, and those people are no longer supporting Yoav, and now we can tell him, listen, you can't have this happen anymore, but not in David's lifetime. Remember we said, in Nizkeh, we'll see the difference between Malchei Israel and Malchei Melech Malachim. The all-powerful king of Israel perhaps is not as all-powerful as we would like to believe. And we should Nizkeh this Rosh Hashanah, when we talk about Melech, U'malchuto b'kol ma sha'ala, we really understand what it means to really do anything, and not just perhaps one who is limited by the power of their general. So that's comments was fine, but we're going to end here because now is the time, 12 o'clock.